My name is Clara and I am 20 years old. I live in a big house by the lake where every corner breathes creativity and inspiration. My mother Carmen often goes on trips for work, devoting herself to architectural projects all over the world, leaving me in the care of my stepfather. Hugo is a professor of literature at the university and has always tried to create an environment of comfort and support for me. We often walked through the picturesque surroundings discussing books and music. There was something magical in our walks. We walked along paths that meandered through the trees surrounding the lake, and we would stop to admire the sunsets that spread with fiery colors over the surface of the water. Hugo always found the right words to describe that moment, as if he could read the thoughts and feelings of the lake. He told me stories of heroes of ancient myths, poetry and arts, making me see the world with new nuances. Once in one of those afternoons, Hugo suggested that I paint our lake. I took the proposal as a challenge and spent several days trying to capture the magic that he saw in the water and the sky. Each stroke of the brush brought me a new discovery, and soon I understood that this landscape was not just a painting but a reflection of our conversations and experiences shared at night. When I returned home after classes at school, I often found Hugo at the piano. He played melodies that moved me deeply. Sometimes I joined him, taking my violin. These musical improvisations were our secret conversations that no one else could understand. In those moments it seemed that the world shrank to the size of our living room, filled with sounds and emotions. When Mom went on another work trip, Hugo and I spent more time together. He became my mentor not only in literature but also in life. We talked about my dreams, my plans for the future, and he always supported me. My aspirations, even the craziest. Her faith in me gave me strength to keep going, despite the difficulties. One day when I came home after a long day, I found Irene, our neighbor and family friend. Irene had always been like a second grandmother to me, wise, loving, and understanding. She invited me to have a cup of tea and we talked at length about life, about Mom, and about Hugo. She shared with me her memories of her late husband's past, and her stories were full of warmth and love. I always felt welcomed in her home. Among books and old photos that night, I reflected on how much my life had changed since Hugo became a part of it. He brought a new light, a new understanding of the world. I felt I was on the verge of something important, but I still didn't know what exactly. The next day, Hugo proposed me to go to an old castle where a music festival was being held. I was delighted with the idea. A castle, music, a starry sky, all that seemed like a fairy tale in which I wanted to completely immerse myself. We spent an unforgettable evening there, listening to magnificent performances and walking through the old rooms where each stone kept a story. When I returned home, I felt that something changed between us. Our conversations became deeper, the gestures more meaningful. I began to see in Hugo not just a stepfather but a person who had become very dear to me. These feelings were new and scary, but I could not ignore them. My life was gradually filling with new colors and emotions, and I understood that I was on the verge of something important and unknown. My name is I am years old. Music, painting, all this had become part of my soul, and I could not imagine my life without these elements. New discoveries awaited me, and I was ready for them, knowing that I would always have someone who supported and understood me. Over time, our relationship with Hugo became increasingly closer. We worked together on projects, composed music and organized exhibitions of my paintings in the local gallery. These processes creative. Our bond deepened and I began to feel that Hugo had become more than just a stepfather to me. Every morning began with the aroma of coffee Hugo prepared with love and our talks over breakfast. We discussed plans for the day. We shared news and ideas. When I showed him my new work, he always found words to inspire me to do more, to give me a new perspective on everyday things. His comments and advice were not just criticism, they were full of deep understanding and care. Our afternoons were spent in the warm atmosphere of the living room, where the sounds of the piano mixed with soft conversations. I played the violin, trying to capture the melody he created on the keys. They were moments of pure harmony when it seemed that the world around us disappeared, leaving only music and feelings. A warm summer day, Hugo proposed a trip to the old castle where a music festival was to be held. Excited, we got into the car and set off, talking about our expectations and anticipating new impressions. The trip was long, but every kilometer brought us closer to something unusual and magical. When we arrived at the castle, I was amazed. The ancient walls, surrounded by dense forests, created an atmosphere of mystery and magic inside the castle. Everything was decorated in medieval style, with solid wood doors, carpets and chandeliers that provided a soft and dim light. The music that was heard from the main hall seemed to invite us to dive into this enchanted world. The festival began with the performance of an orchestra that played ancient melodies. I sat next to Hugo, feeling how the music penetrated my heart, filling it with joy and wonder. We exchanged glances that said more than words. That moment seemed eternal to us. After the concert, we went for a walk through the castle gardens. The night was clear, the stars shone above us as if they were part of that magic. We walked along paths, narrow paths lined with flowering bushes, and we talked about music, life, and our dreams. At some point I realized that I could no longer hide my feelings. Hugo, I began feeling like my heart and strongly. I don't know how to say this, but I think I've fallen in love with you. She stopped and looked at me, her eyes shining in the moonlight. Clara answered, taking my hand, I also feel something more than simple paternal feelings for you. That moment was full of joy and pain at the same time. Both I understood that our feelings went against the established norms that could destroy our family, but it was impossible to deny them. We were a long time in silence, enjoying the moment of closeness and understanding that we had to make a difficult decision. When returning home, I could not stop thinking about what had happened. Our relationship with Hugo had become even closer, but now it had a new depth that brought both joy and suffering. I knew that we had to find a way to live with these feelings without destroying our family. I sought the advice of Irene, our wise neighbor. Listened to me attentively, her eyes shining with understanding. Clara said softly, love is a complicated feeling, and sometimes it comes at the most unexpected moments. But it is not only important to follow your feelings but also think about the consequences. Talk to Hugo and your mother openly. Only then you can find a solution. That her words gave me hope. I understood that difficult conversations and decisions awaited us, but I was willing to face them. My life, full of music, art and love, was too valuable to destroy with thoughtless actions. Several days passed after our trip to the castle. Irene's words continued to echo in my ears, and I knew it was time to act. Each one began with a feeling of Heaviness in my chest. Hugo and I continued, talking and sharing our thoughts, but something had changed. The tension between us became almost palpable one night when Mom left again to meet with her clients. I decided to talk to Hugo about my feelings. My heart was beating hard as I entered his study. He was sitting at his desk deep in work, but when he saw me he put everything aside. Immediately, "Clara, what's wrong?" His voice was soft, but in it you could hear concern. "We need to talk," I replied, trying to stay calm. We sat on the couch and I began to talk. The words flowed like a torrent about how much I loved him, how those feelings tormented me and made me happy. At the same time, Hugo listened to me attentively without interrupting, and in his eyes you could see both pain and understanding, which almost made me cry. "Clara, I love you too," he finally said. "But we must be careful. We can't destroy our family." "I know," I replied. "But what are we going to do?" We remained silent for a long time, trying to find a way out of this complicated situation. Irene was right. Only sincerity could help us understand our feelings. That evening, I went to sleep with a heavy heart. I had nightmares. Mom, when she found out about our feelings, she was leaving forever, leaving us alone. When I woke up, I knew I had to be strong. The next day, Hugo suggested to take a walk along our favorite route next to the lake. The weather was warm, the sun was shining tensely, but inside me a storm reigned. We walked in silence, each one immersed in his thoughts. "Clara," suddenly said Hugo, stopping, "we have to talk to your mother." I stood still, understanding that the time had come. Deep down, I knew it was the right decision, but fear paralyzed me. "It's okay," I answered in a low voice. "We'll talk to her when she returns." The afternoon was calm and serene. I was in my room thinking about the conversation that was coming when Hugo knocked on the door. His face was tense, but in his eyes there was determination. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course," I answered, feeling like my heart began to beat with strength. Again he sat down beside me on the bed and I felt his warmth. We stayed in silence, and suddenly I realized that I could not continue to repress my feelings. Like in a dream, I approached and hugged him. He responded to my hug, and in that moment all doubts and fears disappeared. We belonged to each other despite all the difficulties. Hugo gently caressed my back and I felt the tension leaving my body. We were so close that I could hear his breathing and feel the beating of his heart. Our lips met in a kiss full of tenderness and passion at the same time. It was an indescribable magic. With words, we spent the night together, forgetting all problems and fears. It was a night full of love and tenderness. Every caress, every word was important and significant. We were two souls that had found each other in this vast world. The next morning we woke up, embracing each other. Sun was shining through the window, and I felt happy and at peace. Hugo smiled at me and I understood that together we could overcome all the difficulties. "We need to talk to Mom," I said, feeling a new confidence in my strength. "Yes," Hugo nodded. "We will succeed." When Mom came back, we joined the courage and told her about our feelings. Mom was in shock. Her face reflected pain, but she listened to us until the end. In her eyes I saw pain, disappointment and confusion. "I don't know what to say." Finally, she said, trying to control her emotions. "This is very difficult for me." We sat, the three of us, in a deafening silence. I felt on the edge of the abyss, but Hugo squeezed my hand, letting me know that I was not alone. "We are willing to seek help from a psychologist," she said. "Hugo, we understand that this is not right, but our feelings are real and we cannot ignore them." Mom remained silent for a long time before finally nodding. "Okay," she said, "I agree. We all have to go through this together. From that moment, a new stage in our life, we begin to see a psychologist who helped us understand our feelings and find solutions. It was a long and difficult process, but I felt that we were moving in the right direction despite all the difficulties. I continued painting and playing music were my ways of expressing feelings that helped me deal with emotional tension. Hugo was always by my side, supporting me and inspiring me to achieve more. Our conversations with Mom became more sincere and open. We learned to talk about our feelings without fear of judgment. This strengthened our family and gave us hope for a better future. Several months passed and our family began to recover. I found new hobbies and I learned to control my feelings. Hugo returned to his job, brought with him new priorities, and Mom strengthened our relationship. We understood that the most important thing in our life is the support and love that helps us overcome any difficulty. Now, when we sit on the terrace discussing plans for the future and rejoicing in the rebirth of our family, I understand that we made it. We found the strength and courage to overcome the most difficult trials, and now we are together, stronger and more united than ever. Spent several months after Hugo, Mom and I spoke openly about our feelings. This period was full of tension, difficult conversations, and numerous visits to the psychologist. Despite this, I felt that we had become closer as a family, but on the horizon, new challenges began to appear that threatened our fragile harmony. Mom stayed home more frequently, trying to dedicate more time to the family. Her work was still an important part of her life, but she tried to find a balance. This meant that our conversations became more frequent and deeper. We began to discuss not only current problems but also our dreams and hopes for the future. Mom wanted to know what was going on in my life, and this was a new and pleasant experience for both of us. One night, when Mom left again for a few days on a trip, Hugo proposed to spend the evening having dinner at a cozy little restaurant that we both loved. We sat at a table by the window, enjoying the view of the city lights. The atmosphere was relaxing, and we talked about everything, from my new paintings to his classes at the university to how our life had changed in the last few months. Clara began. Hugo, looking at his glass of wine. I would like to talk to you about something important. I have been thinking a lot about this, and I want to know your opinion. I became alert, feeling that he was going to say something significant. I have decided to accept a job offer in another city. It is a great opportunity for me, and I think that it will help us all to take a little distance and reflect on our feelings. His words struck me. I knew that it could be the right thing to do, but the idea of his departure was painful. How long do you plan to work there? I asked, trying to hold back my tears. It is a temporary project of 6 months. He replied, avoiding my gaze. I think that this will give us all time to clarify our feelings and decide what to do next. We stayed silent for a long time, and I tried to take in his words. It was unexpected, but deep down I knew it could be beneficial for all of us. Hugo was right. We needed time and space to understand each other. When we got back home, I couldn't sleep. The thoughts about the future and how our life would change without Hugo by my side overwhelmed me. I got up and went to the kitchen where Hugo was sitting with a cup of tea. Can't you sleep? He asked when he saw me. I didn't answer, sitting next to him. I'm thinking about what you said. He took my hand and I felt its warmth. Clara, I know it will be hard, but I think we can do it. It's just a temporary separation, and it will help us find answers to our questions. I nodded, feeling tears running down my cheeks. We hugged each other, and I knew that, despite all the difficulties, we were still strong. A few days later, Hugo left. Mom came home, and we supported each other. I started to spend more time On my hobbies, painting and playing music, this helped me to cope with homesickness for Hugo. One of my main supports was Irene. We would meet up and have tea and talk about life. She was a true mentor and friend to me. Her wisdom and understanding helped me find the strength to move forward. One day Irene invited me to dinner, saying that she had important news. I arrived at her house at night and she greeted me with a smile. Clara, I would like to talk with you about your future. It started when we sat at the table. I have seen how much you have grown and matured in the last months. I am proud of you. I thanked her and asked her what she meant. I want to offer you to participate in a project related to your passion for art. I know a person who organizes exhibitions for young artists and is interested in your works. Her words were unexpected and inspiring. I had always dreamed of my paintings being seen by more people, and this offer seemed like a real opportunity. Thank you, Irene, I replied, feeling how a spark of hope was lit inside me. It is amazing. I will gladly accept. The next day, Irene introduced me to the organizer of the exhibitions. He was a kind person called Alejandro who was immediately interested in my works. We agreed that I would prepare some paintings for the next exhibition. Working on the paintings completely absorbed me. It was a time of inspiration and creativity, and I felt that I found a new meaning in my life. Mom supported me by helping me with the organization and the matters related to the exhibition. When the day of the exhibition arrived, I was nervous, but I also felt proud to have reached that moment. In the room, people gathered to see my works, and I was happy to see their reactions to my paintings. Mom and Irene came to support me, and their presence was very important for me. At some point, I noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Hugo, who had come to be with me at that very important moment. My eyes filled with tears of joy when he approached me. Clara, I am proud of you, he said, hugging me. You did it. You found your way. I smiled, feeling that despite all the difficulties we had managed to maintain our bond. This was a new chapter in our lives, and I knew that many more challenges awaited us, but also many joys and love. We were together, and that was the most important thing.